All right, everybody, and welcome to a long overdue edition of Cyber Social Hub's Hubcasts. And my name's Kevin DeLong. I'm the founder of Cyber Social Hub. The last one we actually did was at Techno Security, beginning of last month. Oh, great goodness, it has been a minute. Yeah, it just things get busy, and unfortunately, these things take a little bit of time to plan out to get cranking. But other than that, man, so glad to be back to this. So I want to make sure. Oh yeah, Megan's in there. Yay, these things still do exist. She's saying. Hopefully, you guys can hear me okay. Audio levels are fine. If so, just please leave a comment somewhere in there, and let me know that you can hear me. So Techno Security again was the last one we did. We had our whole full setup there. That was a lot of fun. Cranking through all of that. And what's been going on since then? Well, there's a bunch of new stuff happening on the hub, and we're working on a lot of the back end stuff. Obviously, our membership's growing quite a bit, so we had to step up the server, number one. So that is kind of still work in progress. It did move over to the new server, so if you guys see some quirkiness in the hub, please let me know. That means something didn't come over right, but it should have. But computers are just that. They have their own little personality, and sometimes they don't always work as we expect them to. Our mobile app, the biggest challenge was, just so you guys know, you'll notice there's an update for the mobile app on iOS, and I don't know the one on Android dropped yet, if it released. If so, they haven't notified me yet. iOS came out yesterday or this morning. I can't remember. Maybe Megan can tell us when it came out. I think it was yesterday. The updated app was released from iOS, and that was to help deal with some of these issues that we had during the system move. There was some coding stuff that we missed to move it over to the new site, but the update helped correct that. So if you guys haven't or not aware that we are completely 100% on mobile now, iOS and Android. Man, just go and check out Cyber Social Hub, and we're there. The app is a pretty good little experience. It's a lot of fun. Before I go any further here, I want to thank everybody that's been a big supporter of Cyber Social Hub. We are up to 2,182 members, which is pretty stinking awesome. I'm looking at it here on my other screen. Now, it did drop a little bit because I was going through cleaning out some old members that have bounced back in emails and stuff, things that aren't working anymore. So we try to keep it nice and clean, so we keep an accurate number of how many people are really there. So with that, I want to bring up a friend of mine, Matt. Hang on a second. I got to see now which button to push. There he is, Matt Danner, from Monolith Forensics. Now, Matt, what did I met you in? Was it Denver Techno?
Yeah,
last year.
I met you in Denver, and you were freshly finished with
right.
scuffling with one of those scooters. I think.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
I'm not sure who won, but I just remember you. You had some facial reconstruction work done around that time, I think.
I think I was wearing my Yoda Band-Aids and stuff then too, right? I had a
Yeah.
whole Star Wars. Yeah, I made Dave from Truxton, which I think you know him too, or you maybe met
Yeah.
him. He went down after it happened. The next day, I drug
Oh
him down
wow.
to the pharmacy with me and said, "Man, I need
Yeah.
some patchwork done here, brother."
Yeah. You have to be like under the age of 13 and under 5 feet tall to safely ride one of those.
Oh
The
man.
rest of us we're too top heavy, and it's just dangerous to be on it.
I got a pretty good center of gravity here, though. I mean,
Yeah.
that keeps me balanced out. So, Matt, obviously, people know based off of the little banner that everyone's seeing here next to your name that you're with Monolith Forensics. Can you tell everybody what Monolith actually is? What is it?
Yeah, so basically, it's a case evidence and analysis management platform for digital forensics. So basically, it's where if you're running a digital forensics lab or work in a forensics lab, this is the type of software you would kind of live inside of for your productivity. And when you get a few hundred pieces of evidence a year, potentially a few thousand, this is where that information is going to go, is into Monolith. And then it's a place to track what you're doing for cases, documents and notes and stuff like that.
So you help with the stuff I always hated. Well,
Right.
I hated. Hated's a harsh word. Despised
Yeah.
is a better word for me. I
Yeah.
hated keeping
So
track of all that junk.
exactly. That's a good way to put it. I took on the challenge of trying to take this thing that is sort of like, we all have to do when you're running a lab. It's sort of like taking your vitamins and see if I can build something that's, actually fun to use and something you don't hate looking at every day. Where it's easy on the eyes and, relatively straightforward, simple to use, find things quickly. So it's been the sort of mission behind building it is, this is something we all need to be doing. We need to get away from spreadsheets. We need to have something scalable that works, and then have something that you don't feel like you hate yourself when you're using it, basically.
Right, no, right on, absolutely. Yeah, man, if people are still using spreadsheets, that's a painful process.
Yeah,
But and I know we're not here to really talk about the process in Monolith, but I want to make sure that people are at least aware that you exist. And I need to pop your website up, which I will do here in just a minute. Send the
sure.
link out for everyone in chat there, so they can take a peek at it
Yeah.
and click it. Now, you have a webinar scheduled Thursday, correct?
Yep. That's
Okay.
right.
At is it 2 p.m. Eastern? Is that one set for?
Let me
If
see.
we're wrong, Megan will quickly yell at us. But we are on we're living in about 5 to 6 seconds in the future
It's
with the
1
broadcast.
p.m. Central. It's 1 p.m. Central for
Okay,
me.
so 2 p.m. Eastern. Um,
Yeah.
that's we like to do them in that way. It spreads it across. Yeah, see there, Megan catches up to the present our present time.
Perfect.
I forgot to tell you that because just so everybody knows, we meet in what quote unquote the green room ahead of time, right? So
Oh yeah.
again, Matt and I were talking Star Wars. We were talking a few other things prior to going live here,
Yeah.
and one of those was like, do we tell the audience we were talking ahead of time? Like, yeah,
Yeah, because I hate it when you listen to a podcast and the host always acts like they just hopped in the podcast and started recording immediately. It's like, come on, we all know you were talking for like 10 minutes before you started.
yeah.
It's like, and they're like, hey Kevin, good to see you. Haven't talked in a while. It's like we were just talking for 20 minutes. Like, why the charade?
Yeah, I don't. I'm no good at playing those types of games, so I'm just pretty much transparent. It's like, yeah, we were talking before. Got to test audio levels. Got to make sure cameras are
Yeah,
in position. Got to make sure I move any junk that might be in my background out of said background.
yeah,
And my autofocus. I'll just apologize in advance because Matt was laughing at me in pre-show that my autofocus on this. It's got to be this lens. I think it's this lens. It's a pretty nice lens, but it's autofocus just doesn't want to work today because we're going to test it right now though because I think Matt, I gave you one of our challenge coins when I saw you at Techno, right? Yeah.
yeah,
So
yeah.
here's our challenge coin. Let's test the old autofocus here. Hey, so it did good there. Now if it comes back, that'd be, hey, look, he's got one too, the other side of it. Nice. Yeah. So these are our new challenge coins. They're pretty decent sized. Yeah.
Yeah,
So
these are huge.
I'll
These are
show you.
actually enormous. They're like the size of a silver dollar, basically.
Yeah, it's pretty
Maybe a
big.
little bit bigger. Actually, it might be a little bit bigger than
Yeah.
a
See,
silver dollar.
hey, the autofocus came back too on my face, which
Oh, look
makes
at
me
that.
happy. It worked this
It
time. I
performs.
still might have to send it back.
It's a stage performer. It knows when to perform properly.
Yeah, but we're going to be giving some of these away too. I know normally we just save these for conferences, things like that, but I think we're going to be giving some away on the website on Cyber Social Hub as well. So
Nice.
if you're not part of Cyber Social Hub, make sure you guys sign up and free. That's pretty cool. We got stickers and all kinds of stuff too. I gave you. I gave you. Did I give you the shot glass?
Yeah,
Oh, he's got that too. Look at, he's got all of his swag sitting right there somewhere
yeah.
too.
Just have it sitting right here on my desk. Yeah.
Ah, there it is. Oh, you got one of the original ones. That's one of my favorite. I can't get that design on the front anymore.
Oh,
So
really?
yeah, they come with this. Hold on, let me see because I got a couple. I try to keep every version of it. Yeah, so it comes with this version now. With the hold on. Oh,
Nice.
if you can see my eye, it's not. There we go. So it comes with this now, and then you have to put this on this side over here, which
Okay.
it is
Oh,
what
I
it
see.
is. And for those of you
Yeah.
who don't know what this is, we give this to all of our guests that come on. This is an actual, well, part of a shell casing, hence the primer that's been capped
It's,
here
it's
from
from AC 130, right?
yeah, A10 Warthog.
That's it.
It's the A10. It's a
Okay.
30 millimeter on this one. So
Yeah, it's
yeah,
huge.
yeah,
I mean, this is bigger than a regular shot, isn't it? Like this is not just a. This is like this feels bigger than like a normal shot. Like
you
maybe it's.
you live in Texas, man. This is like a baby shot for you guys down there, right?
We drink out of like cowboy boots
There
down
you
here. So
go. From Ohio, where I'm at, this is a huge doggone shot, man. So it hurt me. Absolutely hurt me. Yeah, it's again, but the shell casing normally on this thing, you can see I have it is about yay big. They cut a big
yeah,
chunk of this thing off, and then
yeah,
obviously when you add the lead and the whatever it shoots out, is this thing's long,
yeah.
man. It's
Because I'm like, yeah, I like to when I'm working. Like this is my desk where I work, and I have a bunch of random knickknacks on the desk because I always like to hold. I'm always, holding something in one of my hands while I'm typing or doing something. So I've got like a pocket knife that I constantly flip open and close with one hand, and I have a pen that I'm like constantly like, clicking and flipping around. And this is one of the things I hold it and I just kind of like, it's like a fidget spinner to me. I just kind of
right.
hold it and it helps me. I don't know. There's something about it. It helps me concentrate when I'm thinking about stuff. And I've noticed I always wonder because there's this fine ridge of like there's some a texture on the top of it, and I
Mm-hmm.
always wonder because I didn't know what these actually look like in real life, but you just explained it to me. They've machined it down,
Mm-hmm.
and that's what this texture is coming from. It's from when they cut it in half, so that's
Yep.
super interesting.
Yeah. Yeah. It absolutely is because those things are monstrous. Yeah. If you've ever seen a YouTube video of any
I
audience has ever
mean,
seen one,
it's
go
amazing because
check
this
them
is
out.
just a shell, and you could hurt. I could put this in a sock and like really hurt somebody with it. Like
Right.
this is serious business.
Yeah, no, you absolutely can. It'd be pretty painful. Yeah, no
Yeah,
doubt.
yeah.
Absolutely. Um, so, oh wait, Megan was posting some stuff here, so I'm gonna bring this up. This was about your doc. What we're gonna be talking about here in a minute, if we ever get
Yeah.
around to it. This is when Matt's webinar is coming up on June 30th at 2 p.m. Eastern, 1 Central, and just subtract an hour as you go down the time zones here in the U.S. If you're not in the U.S., you have to calculate your own time because my math skills are based here in Ohio, and that's not saying a whole lot. So just
I
saying. Uh,
calculated. I calculated as far as the UK because I know they're on GMT, which is just zero, so that's an easy one to remember.
yeah, so you
Um,
can go 6 hours back from you, right? Five from
right,
us. Yeah.
right.
Yep.
You just think about what your own time zone is and just subtract the zero, and now you're on UK time. So they're the easiest, and everybody else is kind of on their own.
Right.
Yeah,
Sorry. Yeah. Everybody else don't know. Yeah, I'd like to see where everybody. Hey, just for giggles, if you guys are actually in chat, just kind of curious what time zone everyone is on. I know there's only there's 11 people on here live. It shows 11 on here live. But again, we sent that email out, and like I was telling you, I was telling Matt in pre-show here, is that we just switched our email sending service, and we were calculating. There's a whole lot that goes into sending a freaking email. By the way, guys, don't ever bore yourself with it. But there's certain rates you can send at, and anyway, so we slowed it down on this rate, and we calculated we can send a large amount, and it should have sent everyone that we wanted to send to in under 2 hours. Well, this was like 3 hours. I think it just finished in 3 hours. I have no idea why, but yeah. So sorry if you're tuning into this and it's a little late or delayed. I apologize because I did again. Ohio math is what it comes down to, wrong. But so anyway, Matt's webinar June 30th, 2 p.m. Eastern. You guys can take the stack from there as to when it is, and it's all about investigating Docker, right?
yeah.
That's
So it's
that's
really
an
good. It's I
interesting
think,
topic.
yeah. So I there's a couple of reasons why I wanted to talk about it, and I've also been putting this together for some in-person presentations I'll be doing
Mm-hmm.
throughout the year at conferences. But I wanted to put it together because for one, I use Docker heavily with Monolith in terms
Mm-hmm.
of deployment and just seeing like the the practical use of it is super impressive in terms of what it allows us to do on the platform, but also when I think about back to my and I was doing a lot, working as a professional in forensics and an incident response, it dawned on me how much forensic data there is inside these Docker containers, and how would we investigate that. And the bulk of the presentation really is just going to be trying to educate, anyone that isn't already familiar with Docker, just kind of educate people on what it is, because effectively it's just essentially a virtual machine. It's just a very streamlined and efficient virtual machine that's a lot more lightweight, a lot easier to deploy. Doesn't take nearly as much storage, doesn't take some kind of virtualized physical disk or anything. So a lot of data can kind of hide inside these Docker containers if you don't know that they're there. And if you're not thinking about them and thinking about how you're going to approach those things, you can miss out on a lot of good data. So it's kind of what we'll kind of dive into some of that.
Yeah, we don't want to give it all away now because people won't go into the webinar, because
Yeah,
all you have to do is watch this and it's
yeah,
get all the information. So
it's
people that really aren't familiar, I know you kind of got a high level, but what do people actually use it for Docker?
Yeah. So it's primarily a development and deployment tool for software companies, and also for companies that may have their own internal software. It's used as a way to manage and deploy software on any system. So one of the benefits of it, part of the reason it's a virtual machine is because it is. So let's say that you have a software application that you need to launch, but you need it to be able to work on multiple hosts, and you may not always know exactly what host that all these what system or operating system or hardware all of these hosts are running. So what Docker does is it abstracts all of that away to where, as long as you get your Docker container and image file set up properly and you have a host running Docker, you can run pretty much anything. It doesn't matter what it is. You just run it, and you have an application you can deploy it on pretty much anything that can run Docker. So it's kind of think about like old school, Java virtual machine, right? You remember back in the old days, any application you installed, you always had to install Java, right? It's the same concept. The concept behind Java was that we're going to make a language that you can write code on, and it's just by default cross-platform. And the only thing users have to do is install the Java runtime on their system. It's similar. That's the similar concept behind Docker, which is you build the Docker image, any host running Docker will run this image. There's some nuance behind that, but that's pretty much effectively what's going on here. So it makes deployment and deploying to production a lot easier and easier to manage for software development teams.
Okay, very very cool. And I have a few more questions about Docker here, but I'm gonna come back to them. But
sure,
I want to switch channels so people get to know you a little bit better, right? It's like who's this guy with the Adidas ball cap talking to me about Docker? I don't know anything about him. How did you get in this crazy field to begin with?
So before doing running Monolith full time, I was just like everybody else on this podcast. I was just a forensic analyst or examiner. I've worked for various companies, but I got started back in 2012, and I got a job as a investigator / digital forensics examiner at the Texas State Auditor's Office. And they basically brought me on to, it was one of those classic things. Hey, you're a young guy and you know how computers work, so we want to bring you in and train you up in some digital forensics stuff. So got on there and they sent me some, various amounts of training, and that's how I started in forensics. And then a few years after that, I went to the private sector. I ran a private forensics lab here in Austin. Ran that lab for about 3 years, and that was a great experience. We did a lot of law enforcement contract work. So I got a ton of experience just working, the typical type of criminal investigative forensics that a lot of your membership, does. But at the same time, I also was lucky where I got to do private sector work too. So we got to do a lot of, special projects with Dell that's here in town, and then got to work with a lot of law firms from across the country and do a lot of litigation work. Got to testify a ton, so I got a really good experience with testimony. And then, and then over time, I'm a curious person by nature, so I always sort of experiment and play with stuff. And I'm all, I taught myself code years and years ago. Started off with C++, then got into Python, and was always building stupid little tools for fun. And then Monolith was one of those dumb little tools that I was just sort of playing with. And over time, it became bigger and bigger, and eventually, someone was kind enough to offer me money to start using it in their lab, and that's the moment it became a business. So,
Uh,
and
Awesome.
that was yeah, that was about 2 years ago, and now it's doing great. It's a full fledged business, have tons of customers, and the platform's just getting better and better, every month. So that's basically the whole story right there.
In a nutshell, yeah. And like, let's see, I got picked to do forensics because I could turn the computer on. I knew where the power
Yeah,
button was.
yeah.
That's really what it was. And I
Well, it's
can't.
funny because I remember in my investigative job doing like I was doing some forensics, like computer forensics, before I got into the field, but it was on accident. And when I look back on it, I really wasn't doing it correctly, but I was still effectively doing, things like web history analysis and stuff like that that I wasn't doing correctly, but I was still doing it.
Mm-hmm.
And I just didn't realize it was its own field until I got that job a couple of years later. So that was kind of an interesting thing. But yeah, how was your start like? Was it they just asked you to start doing it, or did they just start sending you to training? Or
Yeah. So what it was is obviously back then they were those big beige color boxes, right? Back in the day when I started, and they were foreign to people. People didn't understand it, especially our detectives back at that time. No clue what was even stored in there, how it could be of any value, so on and so forth. And like I think most people way back, I think it was 2002, something like that. Um, that it was mainly they call it CSAM cases now. I think is the new term for it. It was just straight. They
yeah,
call them CP cases. It was a different term, and
yeah,
that was what we were dealing with back then. And then obviously it advanced up through all that stuff. And then when mobile phone, I remember one of the first mobile phones. I think it was a phone that was left at a scene of a break-in of a
hmm
warehouse, and
yep,
it wasn't a StarTAC, so it wasn't that old like the old thing, but it was a little newer than that. And they said, "Hey, what can you get out of this?" I'm like, "I don't know." So we gave it a shot. Was it done probably all that accurate? Yeah, but not by today's standards, I'm sure. But at least we
yeah,
got some data out of the thing, and then mobile kicked in like crazy, and that's where really
yeah,
I had my love was mobile on it.
yeah. That's what I was when I was at that private company here in Austin. Um, Most of the work we were doing for law enforcement was mobile, and for about 3 years there, this is one of the things in the industry that happens where ever since I left that and I stopped doing a lot of law enforcement work, and you definitely start that skill set starts to dwindle a little bit where I can still do the work, but you lose kind of like, okay, what's the sort of what's the industry standard right now? What are people doing to get
Mm-hmm.
stuff off of these devices? Has is ISP still a thing? Chip off was basically dying. When I was starting to do it.
Mm-hmm.
Is anybody doing that anymore at all? Is what the current techniques that people are using, and so that's one thing that I've definitely learned with stuff like mobile. Like the analysis really isn't that much different, but the extraction techniques are just wildly different because they were changing all the time, even when I was doing it. One method 1 week worked, and then the next week it didn't. You had to switch to something else. And but with computers, it's like with computers, it's the opposite. Like it's always the same every time you get a computer. There's really the same extraction or collection techniques are still the same, but not really much changing. But the mobile world is just it's just changing like pretty much monthly. It feels like.
Yeah, yeah. For now, it's the same. I mean, there's bound to be a shakeup. Of course, we've been saying that for years, but it hasn't happened yet with computers. And I don't know that I could run a full case from beginning to end anymore. I left law enforcement back in full time 2012 now. Holy crud. It's been a minute.
Wow, that's when I
Um,
got started.
yeah, I left and I went to work for at that time was called Access Data, right?
Yeah,
And I ended up working there for several years. And so I was teaching people how to do all of it. So I stayed fresh and stayed up to the techniques on that. But then I started my own gig in 2016, end of 2016. And
yeah,
now that's been a minute. Now I look at the calendar and I'm like, holy moly, it's really been that many years. Yeah, so I
yeah,
wouldn't dare touch a modern phone anymore. I'd leave it to these guys that
yeah.
know what they're doing at this point.
Yeah, if it were, yeah, for me, if it was law enforcement and you gave me a locked phone, I mean, you know, I would basically make 10 phone calls first. I'd be like, I'd be calling people I know at Celebrite, be calling like other, Monolith customers, being like, hey, what's the current extraction methodology right now? I want to make sure I'm not missing something. But like once I get the data off, I'd be perfectly comfortable doing the analysis. It's just I want to make sure that I don't, brick the phone or, or I want to make sure whatever technique I'm using gets the most data off of it or gives me the best chance to get around the passcode or whatever. Um, but yeah, I mean, it's for me. I did so much of it. Like I would still be able to, rock the analysis pretty easily. But yeah, there would be parts of it where I'd want, some quality assurance in place to make sure I'm doing it the best way possible. Yeah.
Right, right. And you, you'd be making a lot more calls than I would. I'd just be call someone that I think could do it, and I'd say, "Hey, can you do this, please?" And I'd be done with it. Here you go. Do this. Um, Docker. I want to kind of switch channels back to that. What
Yeah.
What do you think? Again, I'm going to ask a random. We didn't. Normally, I send guests a list of questions, like to prepare them, just to let everybody know. I did not send Matt any questions
It's more
whatsoever.
fun. It's a lot more fun when you wing it. It just is. It's
That's what
always
I
more fun.
think. My
Yeah.
staff doesn't think so, but I really enjoy winging it. I
Well,
you,
if it was anyone else than me, because I'm so long-winded, I just love to hear myself talk. So if you had anyone else, yeah, you should probably prepare. But me, like I could just, I'll always have an answer to anything you say. So
Megan, who by the way does work here, said no. Yeah, I mean that's just me. I mean that's my radio. I was a radio DJ. Gosh, way back when.
oh
That's what
wow,
I'm an audio snob. Hence, I got some of the nice gear. I got. This is my cheap mic, what I call my cheap mic. The nice ones.
wow,
There's a sound booth. I can't turn the camera because I'm afraid it won't focus. It's literally right there. There's a sound booth,
yeah,
and that's got the nice microphones in it. Um,
nice.
because I'm
I'm
nerd.
using I'm using my MacBook iPhone microphone. Is that okay?
It sounds
Is
really
that good
good.
enough?
I don't know if
Okay.
people can, but see, you can't. You have it's hard to do this when you can get up in there and get that sound quality. Yeah, see with that microphone. Anyway,
Yeah.
that's my. I'm not going to do the weather report for anyone if you ask. By the way, so I'm just saying, man, chat is really quiet today, and I know it's been a while since we've kind of done one of these things. But Matt, what do you think? Again, here's back to the off the cuff question: is what do you think would be now? I know a lot of people probably aren't doing Docker investigations. This is probably an edge thing that people want to
Yeah.
know about because they're going to start seeing them. I mean, especially if they have to start pulling apart someone's private app. I have full capabilities. I have a Synology in the other room, those data storage that has Docker built right into it. We were
Great.
using it for quite some time,
Yeah.
for the company here, and we've switched away from it. But what do you think would be something that a common piece that someone would overlook
Yeah.
in a Docker investigation? Again, I don't want to give away your whole webinar, but I want to pull some little
Yeah.
nuggets out to educate
Yeah.
folks.
So I would say like the first of all, to answer your question on who might run into this, like who might want to need to know this, really, I would say if you're doing any kind of incident response or if you're doing it's unfortunately it's you're probably not going to run into it that often in law enforcement unless you're working a case related to a business or maybe you seize a bunch of servers or something.
Mm-hmm.
But this is something you could easily run into if you are doing any kind of private litigation work
Sure.
or if you're doing any kind of incident response, like web-based compromise or ransomware or things like that. Because one of the things, just right off the top of my head, the things that you may not miss or realize is that Docker containers can run things like web servers.
Mm-hmm.
You can set up Apache or Nginx inside of a Docker container that serves as a proxy, where traffic coming into that host server, the physical machine, can be handled by that Docker container. So traditionally on a host machine, you would install a web server like Apache or Nginx just right on the host that then proxies and handles traffic coming in from the web.
Mm-hmm.
But with Docker, you don't have to do that. You can just start running a web server container to handle that stuff because it's just going to you can have the host direct traffic over port 80 or 443 to the Docker container. And the reason that's important is because once you have that web server running in a Docker container, like where are the web server logs now going to be stored? So if you're looking for evidence of web compromise, you're looking for things like
Hmm.
credential stuffing or SQL injection, things like that. We're typically going to be checking the HTTP logs. And the problem that presents it, if a Docker container is managing that, depending on how the administrators have set up that container, there's a few different ways that those logs can be stored. Like they can be stored inside the container itself, or they could
Mm-hmm.
have built a volume mapping where they're stored outside the container in a specific directory on the host somewhere. So these are things that if you don't know where to look, you may not realize that you're missing out. Depending on what the application is, you could have literally millions of logs, associated with that Docker container that you just don't know are there or don't know to look, or it could take you, if you're not used to doing it or familiar with Docker, it could take you several days to realize those logs are there. And that's just related to something like a simple web server. That doesn't include, if they have third-party applications or something that has their own distinct logging systems, those could also be managed in Docker as well. And so there's things like that where you've got a whole universe of data inside these containers that if you're not aware of or not knowledgeable of how to, proceed in terms of analysis for that, that can really hinder your investigation and your examination in terms of uncovering what's going on with this system. So that's kind of probably the big thing that I'm concerned with of letting other people know about is in terms of logging basically and getting additional logs and make sure you're getting as much data as you can during your investigation.
Yeah, so it's not enough just to have the, excuse me, the container because those important logs could be very well, and obviously some evidence is going to be outside of that container, something that's managing that container as well.
Because like I said, the administrators, they can set it up to where the logs are just being written inside the container. They can set it up to where it's being written to a specific volume. They could also set it up to where it's being written just to a directory, just right there on the host. So these things. There's these things that you kind of have to do some. If you know that a server or host is running Docker, there's some steps you should probably go to figure out what's the configuration, what are the containers it's running. And then the other piece of it too is that you have a difference between images and containers, where containers are volatile. So
Mm-hmm.
you could potentially, destroy a container without realizing it and lose a rich set of data if it's all stored within the container itself. So there's just these things to be aware of and to think about, and and there's another application to Docker too, which this is a tangent, but if we set aside the forensic issues related to Docker, there's a whole other thing with Docker where it's actually a pretty nice practical tool to use in forensics as well. Because what Docker essentially is, it's a lightweight virtual machine management system. So a good example is something like the Elk stack, so Elasticsearch, Logstash, and Kibana.
Mm-hmm.
You can launch, they offer a Docker image that you can download and run on Windows and literally have your own log processing tool right there on your system. Usually Elk stacks are something that you host on a full-blown server that requires a lot of setup and a lot of like configuration, but they have built a Docker image that makes it super easy where you just run a couple of command line entries and you've got an entire Elasticsearch, powerful log searching utility that's just right there on your local system that you can use for anything. So if you've got, a batch of, 3 million web server logs to chew through, you can just set up Elk stack, an Elk stack right there on Docker on your computer and just parse and chew through those logs if you wanted to. So there's some real powerful applications there with Docker too that I think the forensic community could really take advantage of.
Hmm. Yeah, that's pretty interesting. I mean, hopefully we're not losing anybody with some of the geekanese language
Yeah,
we're using. I have to stop and think, what is he saying? If I start
yeah,
listening close, I'm like, okay, hold on. But hey, Matt, I wanted to throw this out there. Oh man, it kind of went off the screen here. I don't know if I can I bring this down and double stack it? Oh, I can. Look at there. There you go, Matt. Happy
good,
days.
excellent,
I know it's hard to see probably on your screen. 14-day trial. Just downloaded a Monolith. Looking forward to testing
cool.
it out.
It'll
Awesome.
be it'll be a 30-day trial. I need to update the email that goes out, but it's a 30-day trial.
Hey, there you go, Micah. Bonus. And that's just for you for showing up here today. You like
Yeah,
that line of BS I just gave you. So
He's from Barefoot Professional Investigations, so I'll give
hey,
him
you
a.
can't tell me where he's from. We're on a live show.
Oh, give his company a shout out. So
Oh, right on. I'm all for it.
yeah,
So yeah, barefoot. Where Micah, if you're still listening, you're still if we didn't like lose you already. What state where you at? Nope. He says thanks for the plug. So I was
yeah,
incorrect with that. He enjoys it. I try to keep everyone. I'm such a data
oh,
privacy information
yeah,
freak.
that's
Uh,
Oh yeah, let
he
me
says,
make sure I got the name right. It's Barefoot Professional Investigations. Just I'll make sure everybody heard that nice and loud and clear. So, but I mean I know what it's like to run a business, so and I figured he would appreciate a plug. So
no, absolutely. You got more
I took a
people
risk.
on here that I got to give some props to here. So somebody was comparing you. Oh, I know some other stuff, and the other stuff did not win because Monolith is better. So
That's very kind. Thank
yeah,
you.
very cool. Oh, I like the profile picture.
Oh,
They
nice.
are. Is that a single red dot? Sorry, I got to look really close. Yep, that's what it looks like. I have a red dot that I haven't even put on one of mine yet, and I'm a little sad because haven't had time
Oh,
to do it yet. But he is in Charlotte, North Carolina. There you go.
yeah, yeah. So Jay Adams saying the detective from the town you lived in as a kid. Okay, cool. Yeah,
Oh, there's the.
about must be talking about Pearland, Texas, I think. Yeah. Um, yeah, because I did just pick up a customer from a town that when I was between the ages of like 0 and 6, I think I lived in, and their PD just picked up a license to Monolith, which is kind of nice.
Oh, nice.
But, yeah,
Everyone should at least check it out. I mean, it's a free trial. I mean, what's going to hurt? If you don't like it, don't buy it. If
yeah.
and then you can yell at Matt, and he'll fix it.
Well, if you don't like it now, you'll like it in 3 months because it's always changing, always making updates to it. So,
I'm
um,
always a big fan, and thanks, Jay Adams, for that. Let me know what that was. Um, um, I always appreciate the smaller companies a lot when working one on one. It just and it's nothing against the large companies; they do a phenomenal job in what they do. It's just they
yeah,
get so big, and communication becomes a challenge, and that's true with any company the way it grows. You will eventually have that problem, right? And you'll be like,
yeah,
"Yes, I can't wait to have that communication problem." But as you grow, it's hard. But someone your size, like say, Jay Adams or Micah would call up and say, "Hey, this feature would be nice to have." And I know you well enough, Matt, that you're going to stay up late till like 1 in the morning,
oh
2 in the morning, and you'll get it
yeah.
done. And the next day, you'll be pushing an update, going, "Hey, there's that feature you wanted."
Yeah, it's funny too because like that's how it was when I first started Monolith and I first got customers. It was literally if someone asked me for a feature request and if I thought it was a good idea, I would build it like that week. And it would be out. Now the development process is a little bit longer because the product is just so much more complex now that
Mm.
it's a lot harder to just throw in a feature. I have to actually put some thought into it and make sure I'm not breaking other things in the process. But I have a huge like Trello board where usually anytime someone emails me a request, I open up Trello and if I don't already have a list for that organization, I start a new list for them and I just add in the stuff they're requesting. Even if I haven't agreed to do it yet, I put it in there because periodically I just go through all those requests and I just start looking at it and rethinking what they asked for and start thinking about, okay, which things should I include in the next feature set? Which are some of these that are probably not going to happen, and that's sort of my process as the company owner to figure out what direction we should go. And I literally use feedback from my customers to help me figure out where I need to go and what features I need to build. And so that's usually where my priority is. But yeah, it's I tell you, it's getting harder and harder as unfortunately as we become more successful, it's harder and harder to just straight up build features because it's so many factors I have to consider now. Back when Monolith started, it was a simple, relatively straightforward product and it was easy to add stuff to. Now it's like I have to really think about the whole platform as a whole when we add new features to make sure it fits and it's not breaking anything or breaking workflows. And but yeah, it's interesting. But that's what I try to maintain that level of developmental integrity if I can. But yeah,
Yeah, it's not gonna get easier, but I don't want to give anything away. I worked for a company, right, and I managed a backlog with bugs and roadmap stuff, and
yeah,
and at any given time there may or may not have been hundreds of bugs listed on a sheet at some point. It was rough. I mean, how do you come out with new features when you're dealing with all this stuff, because you're building your tool and it's stuff. And man, what a nightmare! And anyone who's ever worked in the software industry will know very quickly that
cool.
it's a nightmare.
My favorite moments are when I know there's like an optimization issue somewhere in Monolith, and I'm like, it's fine. Nobody's going to run into that for like 6 months. It'll be fine. And then like the next week, somebody runs into it, and it's like, I have to stop everything and go fix it. And I'm like, it was fine. It was fine. And then one of my customers hit the lottery and ran into that bug
Mm-hmm.
that I knew was going to happen. And I was like, okay, we'll fix it. Fine.
Just one of those things, man.
Because
Yeah.
you can't, yeah, because I think I'm pretty open about this stuff, but I think what people don't realize about software development is every piece of software you use, the company knows there are certain bugs that they haven't fixed yet. There's a handful of bugs that we know about, and we're on the way to fixing them, but it's just a matter of it's not a bug that's going to seriously break functionality or features.
Mm-hmm.
It's like we know it's a very specific use case that doesn't come up very often. So it's on the list to fix, but we just, we work through it in terms of while we're working on feature sets as well.
Yeah.
But like, yeah.
And that's something you had to deal with. Are there any forensic trainers in the audience? I'll give a few seconds. If so, just like kind of kick a thumbs up or a hi or something in chat, because I was a forensic trainer for several different things. We taught multiple products as
Yeah.
well. One of the places I taught was NCFI, and down there, and you'd learn to what's the phrase? I'll just say it. You learn to teach around the bugs, right? It's like
Yeah.
after you do this, don't ever hit that button. You can hit this button, but not that one,
Yeah.
because it'll go all ugly. Yeah, it was like an
Yeah.
orchestrated production and within some particular software that we would
Yeah,
show.
and honestly, like I have the best customers ever because they're so nice to me when they find a bug, because they will find the bug and they'll usually screenshot it, and they're like, I don't know if I'm doing something wrong, but I did this and this happened, and I'm like, you didn't do anything wrong. This is our fault. We'll push out a patch and fix that pretty quick. But that's that's what our bugs are. It's some small thing where it's like, and sometimes it's not a bug. It's just like, every once in a while, somebody will be using a feature in a certain way that doesn't quite match the workflow they're trying to do.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll tell them like, hey, I see what you're trying to do. You need to try doing it this way instead, and it'll work. That workflow will work for you better. It's usually what happens a lot of the time. But no, I think that's what I love about this, doing this, is that, you know, um, even getting those feedback, like I don't think people realize how important it is when a customer tells me about a bug, like tells me that it exists, because a lot of people don't do that. A lot of people run into a bug and move on. But whenever a customer reports it, it's a huge deal, because it that goes immediately. If something is broken, if there's a feature set that's broken in Monolith and I get reported, it immediately jumps to the top of my list, because it's like I can't allow the product to exist in a state where one of its features just isn't working in a certain manner. Like that is usually fixed within 24 hours. There are other bugs that we know about that are there that don't get fixed immediately, but it's because we know that it's an extremely rare thing that they're going to run into. It's not breaking the software right now. It's more like we'll get it fixed in the next patch round or whatever.
Yeah.
For the small amounts of times it'll get run into.
Yep. And back to life. Back to life.
Yeah.
So I keep switching, and this is completely my fault. I keep switching away from our Docker topic here.
Well, it's fine.
I'm pretty bad. I got some big case of what we call here in the office, well, our virtual office, which is spread across Ohio for the most part, is squirrel syndrome, right? Be squirrel. I'm like, oh, let's talk about that over there. There goes the squirrel. We'll talk about it. So I'm horrible at it.
Me too.
I think my staff's gotten used to it. If not,
Uh,
I think they just tolerate it now,
yeah.
and they're very
Yeah.
polite. So thank
Well, I think
goodness
too,
for that.
if you listen to other podcasts, they do the same thing. They have a title for the podcast, and then they talk about half the show is about something else, and then they spend 20 minutes on 20% on the one topic that was the title of the show. So I think people are used to that.
I think I'm going to stop giving up. I'm just going to give titles up altogether. I'm just going to put, hey, it's Hubcast, whatever, and hey, Matt's here. We're hanging out and talking
Yeah,
DFIR crap, right?
yeah,
That's it. That's all we're talking about. Um, but so, how does one? I guess there's probably some challenges of acquiring Docker. Now,
yeah,
again, I haven't asked you this in advance, so I don't want to put you on the spot. But my
yeah,
own question, I know how, especially like, especially on a Synology for crying out loud. This thing is, I don't know, I forget how large this freaking Synology is. This is not
yeah,
something you're just gonna go and image. I mean,
yeah.
because my
So
Synology is insanely large.
yeah, yeah.
But
I mean, for something like a Synology, yeah. I mean, and typically even with servers, it depends on what your work is. If you're in law enforcement, you're probably going to image it. If you're in incident response or
oh man,
data security, you're not going to image a whole server. You're going to extract forensic data from it using remote collection tools, something like that. But the key with Docker really is, part of your assessment process, and you'll know if you shouldn't ask about Docker just because, but if you're talking to a company that has a server application host of some kind, then that's when you need to start asking about what are your deployment technology, where does all the important data live on this system, and if they mention they use Docker,
mm-hmm.
that's when you have to start asking questions. And that's where learning, we're not really going to, we'll cover this a little bit in the webinar, but, we'll cover some simple commands that you can run to kind of learn some information about the Docker installation and what's being deployed on it and how they're set up. But that's what you first need to figure out really is like, how many containers do they have running? What are each of these containers? What does each of them do? And then start figuring out what's the logging output for these containers. And then in terms of collection, um, what a container is, the container itself is something you can collect. It does exist on the disk, but it's
Right.
also running in memory too. So you have to think, about what in this container could be in memory that we might want. Are we good to just shut this system down and then image it normally, or collect those containers, because those containers are self-contained pockets of data. So you can, for instance, in Docker, you can migrate a container. So you got a container running on one host and you want to move it from there to another host, you can do that. So you can extract that data out for processing. The problem is that another problem, the thing to be considerate of is that you have Docker images, which is sort of the baseline image for that container.
Mm-hmm.
And then you have the containers that are running based on those images. And they're two different things. The image itself is basically useless to you because it's not the running instance of that application or that container. The container is what's important because that's what's live, that's what's running, that's what's getting the ingress and egress of data, that's what's logging data. So the containers are really where the source of information is. So that's what you should be trying to learn information about and trying to focus your collection efforts on. Um, and that's really, before you attack it though, you need to try to get as much information as you can before you start moving into the collection phase.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, because I literally in law enforcement, if I came across my particular Docker on this Synology, my Synology is like 21
Yeah,
terabytes in
yeah,
size. That's
yep,
ridiculous. You're not imaging that anytime soon.
yeah, yeah.
No, I mean
I mean that's more
it's
of a,
massive.
yeah, that's where you would do a potentially a targeted collection where if it's a Synology, that means it's a file share. So you get a forensic laptop connected to your network, or even isolate it on, get a Wi-Fi box, or I mean a network router, and maybe isolate that Synology and then do a logical collection of the files on it. Um, you could, I mean, there's nothing wrong with imaging all of it. It's just like for example, I have a Synology at
So
home too, but it's a 48 terabyte. It's got 56
holy crap!
terabytes worth of drives in it. So you know you're
I thought
you
mine
can
was
image
too
that if
much,
you
man.
want.
Yours is
But
like insane.
it's probably the same model. It's just bigger hard drives, and
Uh,
um,
1520, I think is what mine is. Something
yeah.
like that.
So it's yeah, those are tough. Those are the tough situations in forensics, is when you run into those huge storage arrays, and depending on what you're doing, maybe it makes sense to image it. You pull out each drive, label them first, and then image each individual one. And
Oh man,
if it's
that's a lot of stuff.
if it's a standard file system or RAID setup, you can usually rebuild it in pretty much any typical forensic tool, and you're fine. But it just depends on what kind of work you're doing, really.
Yeah, yeah, pulling it
I would,
back.
I would try not to image it if I could, but
I would definitely not.
sometimes you can, you may have to for whatever reason. But
Oh man, yeah, I would never want to. Just I keep looking over here because I'm looking at now. I'm only using like 4.2 terabytes of my 20 terabyte array. And
yeah,
I thought I was a data hoarder myself. That show it's on hoarders that you see, and you
yeah,
walk through someone's house, and it's essentially a little path through all of their crap.
yeah,
If data was a thing to you could hoard that, my house would look like that. But
yeah,
luckily, I have a Synology, and I can just throw crap over on that.
yeah. So if anyone listening, if you don't already have something like this, hopefully your lab has something similar like this. Like some kind of NAS where you're storing your forensic images and extractions on, because it's super worth it. Um, Instead of trying to track multiple hard drives that have different cases on them, you can build out. I mean, mine, to give you an example, I built out a 48 terabyte server. It has 8 drives in it, but it has a 2 drive fault tolerance. So it means
Mm.
2 of my drives can die and I still have access to the data, right? Um, and that was like $2,000 for close to 50 terabytes of redundant storage.
That's
So
not too
it's
shabby. How long ago did you do that though?
just a few months ago.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay, not bad. That's
yeah.
really not bad.
But don't order your drives from Amazon, because they I ordered 8 drives from Amazon and they just put them in a box and shipped them to me, like just rolling around in the box. And it took me about it took me about 2 weeks to rotate all the bad drives from that process, because it
Oh man.
probably about four of those 8 drives were bad because of the way they shipped them, and I ended up returning them to Amazon, just ordering from Newegg, because Newegg actually shipped them properly in proper packaging. Um, but yeah, I mean that's the way to go for you know for storage, at least for short term on site storage.
Heck yeah.
50 to 100 terabytes at any given time is usually pretty good.
Yeah, I when I was in the lab, I built my own server out of some just older stuff, and it was the technology was um oh, Manny, hey, Manny's in there too. He says sometimes they're the gray market drives too, quote unquote.
Probably. Who knows? I mean, these drives, who knows where they came from? It was so weird. I was like, really? They just threw them in this big box with no packing or anything. And I had probably Ace Ventura deliver mine.
I'd be
So
so mad. I mean, with the week I've had though, it'd be surprising. I mean, really.
yeah,
But
yeah,
yeah. So shout out to Manny at Bitmines too. If you guys need a good forensic box, he's the guy to talk to over there. So there. See, I'll give mine too. I felt bad for
yeah.
not giving a proper one out there. But hey, Megan, I was going to type this to you in Slack, but it's easier just here. We're live. If you could send me the link to where Matt's webinar is at, I'll post it here in there. Oh wait, I think it's in the description of this video. Now I can't see it because obviously we're using some different tech than what we really use on there. We're not using YouTube directly to broadcast this out. We're using Ecamm, and I got to show that to you, Matt, and it's pretty crazy all the windows that it is. Oh, Matt's got it there. Oh, that's your demo link.
Yeah, that's nice. So if anybody, yeah, I was going to share with you, if you want to share it, it's fine. But it's just a calendar link. So if anyone just wants to schedule time with me, they can,
Are you,
instead of bypass the trial request process and just come straight to me. And then I'll also let me find my.
I can share this link out Now, I'm just going to let you know that this video sets here on YouTube for a long time.
Oh, okay.
And
I was,
you
I was
might
thinking
get
posting
some
the,
weird people clicking your link and scheduling some stuff with you. I'm happy to do it for you, but I'm trying to keep that.
well,
Uh,
you can, yeah, okay. I'll let you be the decider then. I just, I'm just a nice guy that just I like to make myself available, and I'll let you run security for me
oh
on what.
man, oh yeah, I don't want to do it. Go to Monolith Forensics because it's there, right? I mean, you can pull the link from there. You can find it,
Yeah, yeah,
make an appointment, contact Matt that way, um, and
yeah,
yeah, just do it that way.
yeah. If you go to the site, just
Because you
scroll
can
all the way to
click
the
these
bottom.
links are live because I can post live
Okay,
links and
okay.
yeah.
I feel like
I'm sorry.
I feel as much tech stuff I've been blathering about, you think I'd be aware of that
Well,
and know better.
I just think when I think of these things, it's like, oh, what ornery things could I do to someone? Oh, that is one right there. I could just fill up their freaking calendar with fake crap all day long. So
I would
I try to
I
be
would
cognizant of it and not do it.
yeah, worst case scenario, I can just kill that link and generate a new one. And it's fine.
All right, I could post it, but here's the request the demo link, which at least you can filter a little bit.
Yeah,
Let me get this out here. There, it should be in chat somewhere in there. Now, granted, we're living about probably at this point 15 seconds or so into the future because it seems the longer we go in this in the video
oh,
broadcast, the more buffer we get.
yeah,
Um, Even though we set it for low latency, I don't think there's a true definition of low latency on the delay. But there it is. And I'd be curious: has anyone done had to do a Docker investigation before, or maybe? Well, obviously, some people probably have done virtual machine stuff. I'd be curious to see if you guys are willing to share that in chat. Um, please do. Absolutely, let us
yeah.
know. And
I do run
be curious.
periodically. Yeah, when I because we also so I use Docker to manage the cloud, infrastructure for Monolith, but
Hmm?
I also use it to for labs that need on-premise deployments of Monolith. So
Hmm, that makes sense.
that's what I want to demonstrate in the webinar is to see the beauty of what Docker does, where you can run one command line entry and it just instantly deploys the entire Monolith infrastructure on your on-site system.
Wow.
And it's all because of the tooling that Docker provides behind the scenes. But I every once in a while I'll talk to a lab that's interested in Monolith, and I'll ask them because I'm usually expecting them not to know what Docker is, but then I run into probably 10% of labs that are like, oh yeah, we already use Docker for something else. Like they use it for some kind of internal tool that they use, or one of the really nerdy guys in the lab just uses it for random stuff. So it's kind of cool to see it starting to pop up a little bit because people are seeing the utility that it has, um, and I think it's going to become really popular. I think people are going to find a lot of really cool uses for it in the future.
Nice. Yeah, I think so for sure. And somehow my Slack got buried underneath my eCam, and I cannot even see it right now, which is very strange. So hang on a second. Man, this sucker's buried. How is this even happening right now? I'll tell you what, Megan can attest that this has been a nightmare technology week for me with migrating a couple servers over and moving email systems, and it's just been ugly, ugly. So I don't think I can even pull this link out of here. And Megan, I know you can't post it. I am trying to click Slack for the life of me. I cannot. So stand by. I'm going to do something really bizarre here and just shut my Slack down. And I'm going to move Slack over to another window. I'm going to move it over to a blank screen here where it can't be evil. Because I am on a Mac and it allows me to do some pretty fun stuff. There we go. Now I can freaking get to it, little turd. Say if all else fails, I put. Oh my gosh, Ecamm is following me from window to window. Never mind. I'm so. This is anyway.
It's
It's
got
a
you locked down.
it's a technology. Hey Megan, can you just send that to me in like a standard SMS? I want to get it posted out here at least on there. But again, I think it's in the description too, so we can just deal with that. So if you want to sign up for this Docker event, go into the description, and it's going to be right there. Flashman says he did one 2 weeks ago,
Okay.
and to boot less, it was on a Mac.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
so
That's what's great too, because that's the great thing about Docker. It can run on any Linux kernel-based system, and then now Windows Server finally. Um, so on Windows, you have to have if you want to run Linux containers, you have to have the Linux subsystem running on your Windows machine. But when Microsoft just released that they now support WSL for Windows Server, so now you're going to see Linux containers more easily running on Windows Server in the future, which is super interesting. So you can have a Windows environment infrastructure that's running Linux containers. So that's going to be, it can already do it, but it took a lot of extra setup to get it done. But now it'll be a lot easier.
yeah.
And that's the kind of the beauty of Docker, is it allows you to run anything on just about any host, which is really cool. It makes for interesting investigations too. Yeah.
I'm really looking forward to it. And if Flashman's still listening here, if he's still in, again, I'm trying to account for the delay here. Is that if you want to share what was some of the biggest challenges, if it's an open case and it's going to adjudication, just don't answer me. It's a lot easier that way, because that way you don't have to be challenged if someone finds out who you are. But if you want to share any challenges you had, please do, or just mention something you should watch out for. If not, I'm really looking forward to this webinar coming up next Thursday at 2 p.m. Links here in the description. It is right now currently there, so I can't post it, but yeah, it is there. And Megan's laughing that this is the most just stream of consciousness hubcast that we have ever done, and I would tend to agree. That
Those are the best.
I wanted to talk Star Wars, and because I know you watched the final episode. Again, hey, spoiler alert! If you have not watched the final episode of Obi-Wan, I'm going to not say anything, but it may slip. Yeah. But you're also a fan of The Boys, which is on Amazon Prime. Yeah. And I know Megan is as well. And I don't want to spoil that either, because I've been keeping up with both of those. That first episode of season 3, man, it threw me. I was like debating whether to stick through, because I've watched the other seasons, but oh my gosh, it was crazy.
Yeah.
So I don't know if anyone else has seen those crazy things. And there's that stream of consciousness coming in again. Megan says today's episode of The Boys was pretty wild.
Yeah. I watched it. I caught it last night at midnight, because I wanted to see it. And yeah, it's one of the best. It's probably one of the better. It's got some crazy stuff in it, but ultimately, it's probably one of the better episodes that they've had in the series. Yeah, just some of the things that they do with the plot are just some satisfying things that occur. So
we should just
now people are going to think I'm super weird because there's some weird stuff that happens in that episode. And
it's like, was he talking about this? Is the cool part?
Yeah. That's not the part I'm saying is awesome.
Yes, no, that's what he's talking about right now. Oh, that's great. Yeah, I don't know if anyone, even Ron watches The Boys, thought it was, No, The Boys is crazy. I enjoy it. If you're in, here's my thought. If you're in forensics, you got to be some type of nerd. There's an inner nerd in there somewhere. So either it's Star Trek, Star Wars, and you're maybe one of those weird hybrid people like I am, like them both. The Boys definitely, right? And if you don't like Marvel, you just turn off your computer right now.
I mean, right now, my shows of interest are, The Boys, Kenobi, which is now over, but also Better Call Saul. Better Call Saul is probably my favorite.
Really?
Probably one of my favorite shows of all time. Yeah. That show's amazing. So if you haven't watched it, I mean, it's a show about fictitious lawyers, but it's really well done. The story's great. It has great characters in there. This is the last season that's running for it right now, and it's they chopped the season in half. So the first half is already done, and then the second half is starting back up again in about 2 weeks, 2 or 3 weeks, something like that. But if you don't know, I feel like I'm now a shill for AMC or something. But if you don't know what Better Call Saul is, it's a prequel to Breaking Bad that follows Saul Goodman's character from Breaking Bad before he becomes the Breaking Bad Saul Goodman that you see in Breaking Bad. And it's created by the same people. It's an awesome show. Yeah.
I have never watched one single episode of either.
You should.
I may be that person that I've never had. I just never have.
Yeah.
I will.
They're both amazing shows. Yeah. yeah, it's hard to describe. You just have to. Breaking Bad is just it's on another world, type of show where you just basically it's just a show where you watch a mild mannered chemistry teacher turn into a ruthless drug dealing maniac over the course of about 6 to 7 seasons. It's pretty amazing.
I think I might have to watch it now because I have a hard time of sometimes watching those types of shows just
Yeah.
because I worked in a drug unit for so many years. I worked
I
a
think
certain life,
yeah,
and it's weird to watch it. It's
I
just
think
like,
I think you'll be pleasantly surprised because
yeah,
I feel like they did a really good job with how they portray law enforcement specifically because one of the main characters is a DEA agent,
hmm,
and there's certain things they portray them like, they have them in really kind of they're working on a kind of a rundown like cubicle based office. There's like little things they decided to do where they didn't make it flashy like they do in a lot of law enforcement programs
hmm.
where they look like they have an $800 million budget or something, and
Yeah,
it's like, no, they're just working in this crappy office out of Albuquerque like you would expect, and like I thought they did a good job with that piece of it, which is what part of what makes the show great is they kind of nailed some of the authenticity. Outside
that's
the craziness that happens in the show, they've they did a good job with some of the characters on the authentic piece.
that's good. That sounds like that part's authentic because our offices were outside. Our first offices they had since moved. We're at a water
Yeah,
treatment facility. We were in this freaking trailer, and literally outside the window, you could look
yeah,
man-made rivers being processed of poo.
yeah,
Look out the windows of the trailer, and that's what was happening out there. So yeah, it's pretty
yeah.
accurate. It's wherever the
You can see
city
you can
can
see
get
where
money.
Ron Mays there saying he saw a few Breaking Bad episodes reminded me of my old life in law enforcement.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, if hey, if they would have had a you know, an office based at a poo plant, it would have got me. That was it. I learned a lot about sanitation that I had no idea existed, how they clean the water. But
Yeah,
it's a different topic altogether.
trying to
Anyway,
figure out where the smell's coming from. So yeah.
yeah, I'm looking at the clock here and I realize it's like 7 minutes after, and I'm like, oh man, we went over, and I'm by the river, Paige and Chris. Oh yeah, yeah. Yeah, but it was a different kind of man-made river. I don't know if I have some pictures of that stuff or not. It was different. So hey, make sure that you guys sign up in the link below for the webinar. It's going to be next Thursday at 2 p.m. Eastern. Now I don't we didn't talk a whole lot about Docker, but hopefully we get you to sign up. And I apologize. I fully didn't intend it to be like any type of clickbait or anything like that. We did talk a couple things about Docker, but I am going to start changing the titles of this to just what guest I'm having on and whatever random shenanigans I know we're going to talk about for sure.
Yeah.
Just because I don't want anyone to.
I think we need to make that Megan Ryberg stream of consciousness episode that she's making fun. Just call it stream of consciousness, and and we'll just start talking and just see where the conversation goes.
Yeah, we'll just have the headline call it "Follow the Squirrel." That's it. In the
Exactly.
Matrix, it's follow the white rabbit, right? We're just follow the squirrel. Yeah, wherever the
Yeah.
squirrel goes, squirrel. Makes me laugh. Matt, hey, thanks so much, man, for coming on, and enjoy it. Always talking to you, and that webinar next Thursday at 2 p.m. Eastern, which is going to be, what date is it? The 30th? See, now I got to scroll because I lost the exact date through all of
Yeah, that's
this.
the 30th. Yeah.
All right, so I got that part
Day of
right.
the month.
Yeah,
Yep.
30th at 2 p.m. There it is. I'll put Megan's old chat back up there so I don't lose track of it. So yeah, there we go. So on the
Cool.
30th, if you guys have any questions, head over to Matt's website, monolithforensics.com, and make sure you reach out to him if you're interested about Monolith Forensics. If you're not using any case management, or even if you are and it sucks, make sure you check his stuff out. It doesn't suck, so you can check it out and see if it's going to work for you. You'll be pleasantly surprised, I think. Sorry, I'm still
Okay.
reading all of this. Next week's webinar recording.
Yeah.
You check out later. Yeah, it's going to be recorded, so you can check it out whenever. Oh, you're going down to the big old NCFI. Yeah, that's a good place down there. Jay Adams. Hopefully, it's not like a terribly long visit. Like I think one of their classes is several weeks long that you have to stay down there in Hoover,
Right.
Alabama.
Yeah, it's the B cert.
Whole lot of nothing.
Yeah.
You got to go. I mean, it was nothing. to go out and to do down there. At least, well, there was this one. Again, I'm holding this over here. There was this one place, this one bar we all go to every so often, but it was like a dive, and everybody loved it. It was the worst place you could ever go. Um, I think there was a collective of three teeth in the whole place until we would show up. It was fun though. It was always a
I,
good time.
I think I can beat you on that. My first, and I know we're going over here, but my first forensic training ever was in Natchitoches, Louisiana, and
Hmm.
it was a training run by NW3C, and it was hosted at the Natchitoches Police Department, which was basically, I mean, it's got to be one of the smallest police departments in the state, if not, close to small in the country. Just this small little department in the middle
Yeah.
of nowhere. And it's actually a nice place. So they have this cool little, I don't know what you would call it, like, sort of mall type thing that's right there on their river. It has some nice little restaurants and stuff. So it's a great place to visit for a weekend if you're near in Louisiana. But yeah, that was pretty interesting to have your first forensic training like out in the middle of nowhere in Louisiana. It's not exactly what you would think you would get trained to do digital forensics, but it was still a lot of fun.
Yeah, I always like the smaller out of the main path forensic training and stuff because you always pick up. I don't know. It just seems a little bit more personal to me than some of the large training
Yeah,
that you go to for
yeah.
sure. But Matt, again, thank you so very much. Don't go anywhere. I'm going to go ahead and end the. He said Matt or Ron says meat pies. So, but anyway, thank you everybody, and we're going to try to start doing these every week again. So if you want to be a guest on Cyber Social Hub and follow the squirrel, then all you got to do is just go into Cyber Social Hub, cybersocialhub.com. Come find me and say, hey, I want to be a guest on the show, and we can talk about a lot of craziness too. So happy to do that. Again, Matt, thanks very much. Don't go anywhere. I'm going to go ahead and go into post show, start our awesome music up, and we'll see you guys next week. Thanks.